We may disagree, may agree on it, but it's been big news lately. God of War 2 delayed to 2022. And also tied with that, it will be cross-gen. I have this quote that's always tweeted and retweeted or quoted from Shigeru Miyamoto. I'm pretty sure I have it right. It's if a game is delayed once, shame on me. If a game is delayed twice, it's a 10 out of 10. Is that basically what he says there? I don't know, but it's always butchered, and I don't even know if he was originally the person that said it, but it's always tied when a game is delayed. But we have the press release here from Sony Santa Monica. Since the release of the next God of War teaser last year, we've been humbled by the amount of love our community has shown us. We're incredibly grateful to see so many people excited to experience the next chapter of Kratos and Atreus' journey. We remain focused on delivering a top quality game while maintaining the safety and well-being of our team, creative partners, and families. With this in mind, we've made the decision to shift our release window to 2022. Thank you for all the continued support. We've got some exciting things in the works that we can't wait to show you. So finally, 2022, which also at the end of the day, it's like we were just kind of waiting for them to announce it because it's like there's no way they were going to make it. But how'd you feel about seeing this confirmation of 2022?
Yeah, I think like you said, it's something that we kind of already knew in the back of our minds. I mean, I was always sort of the mind that as much as it may seem pretty obvious it's going to be delayed, that we might as well think it's coming out in 2021 until we hear otherwise. But yeah, it's is what it is. I mean, the games get delayed all the time now. It's just it's sort of just getting to the point where it's just like, we're used to it, and like I always say, there's so many games coming out all the time that it's not like, oh, that's been delayed, what am I going to do for the next like few months kind of thing. So but it's definitely not a surprise. We haven't even seen anything about it yet, so
Right.
Can sort of get excited for that. So as much as it won't be coming out this year, at least something will be coming out this year that we can see, like some gameplay or something. But yeah, like you said, it was to be expected. So and it sounds like they're doing it for good reasons as well, to make sure that nobody has to work too hard or strain, sort of have any sort of mental strain, especially coming out the back end of all this COVID stuff. So
Right.
yes, it's I'm sure it'll be a relief to everybody working on it that they don't have to squeeze it into this year.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it was expected, just like you said, but it was expected a year ago when they showed this thing off, when they showed the title screen. It's like 2021. No, obviously not. But I have some tweets here from Corey Barlog where in VGC Video Games Chronicle has the kind of breakdown of him tweeting saying that he did intend on it being 2021, but he got it wrong. They didn't. They thought they could reach that goalpost, but they just couldn't make it. But so I guess internally they had every intention of trying to nail 2021 at the very end of 2021, and they didn't do it. So I would imagine if they're trying to nail holiday season this year, that maybe we see it Q2 or like, the first 3-4 months of 2022, or do you think they really hold it off to like next holiday season?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll know more once we actually see something about it, but I'd have to imagine it's like the latter half of next year, just because we haven't seen anything. But they could be sort of going for the sort of, was it Fallout 4, where it was announced and then came out like 4 months later or something, or maybe a bit less than that. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see until we see more of the game and get a little bit more of a look into sort of how it's doing and how long how far along it seems. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for this. But it does, for some reason, it does feel like a long time since the first one came out. I mean, I know it hasn't actually been that long, but it just seems like a really long time since I last played it. But yeah, super,
I want to
super
say it was
exciting.
2018. Yeah, 2018 is when the last one came out.
It feels like it came out like 10 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad turnover, to be fair. I mean, if it is to come out next year, 4 years between sequels really isn't that long. I mean, that's like movie sequel sort of length, which isn't too bad at all. So yeah, it'd be nice to see it next year. But I just can't wait to actually see something about it, about what the story's going to be about, and yeah, just get a bit more hype for it.
Well, Cam, you got that logo that they revealed. That's all you really need. I mean, you got that cool symbol deal. It's like you're all set until they show us something. So, Callum, with that, there was a lot of internet trolling and drama happening where on Twitter, of course, that's where people were attacking Alana Pierce, who just got a job at Sony Santa Monica, basically blaming her in these really gross tweets about how it was going to be delayed and whatnot. So out of that, Cory Barlog jumped to her defense and basically is saying that any kind of anger towards it being delayed, or the fact that it's going to be PS4, which was confirmed as well, to direct that towards him. This is his decision. He intended on it being 2021. So, all that falls on him as a director. So there's been a lot of negativity with this stuff. Of course, that's what the internet does, and it's really gross. But as far as the PS4 drama, the fact that it's going to be cross-gen, how do you feel about them confirming that? We kind of talked about that with Horizon. Do you have that same feeling towards God of War?
Yeah, I think it's good. Like, I'm not worried that God of War is going to look anything but great. So it's not something I'm concerned about. I mean, if it looks as good as Miles Morales and Horizon Forbidden West, which we know how good they're going to look, and they're both cross-gen games, then that's fine. I'm not bothered at all. In fact, I find it really interesting that 2022 we're still going to see these big games being supported on PlayStation 4. I think that's, a lot of people go on about how Sony are very anti-consumer, but I think that's the complete opposite. The fact that these big games are still coming out for people who haven't been able to make the jump to PS5 yet.
Yeah, let's jump into that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Oh, just with the conversation of it being cross-gen and the different views on it. So one thing that's sort of tied into this, and I'll just bring it up quickly, is they also confirmed Gran Turismo 7 will be cross-gen. And there's been a lot of conversation about the whole generations matter comment from Sony around the same time last year, where they were saying they're going to support PS5 as its own generation. But now it looks like a lot of these huge first-party titles are getting cross-gen support. So as far as a whole, how do you feel about Sony's initial comment? Do you let them off the hook with now just all of a sudden we're just getting cross-gen games? Do you think their messaging has been consistent, or should be, kind of under the microscope a little bit?
Well, no, so I think they have been treating it as its own generation in a lot of ways. You've got the DualSense, which is only next generation. We've had Demon Souls and Returnal, which are both only on PlayStation 5. They've also talked about how they were going to continue supporting PlayStation 4, years into the PlayStation 5's life cycle. So I don't think their message has been inconsistent. I think maybe people have just been looking into it and sort of expecting different things. That's not to say I thought any differently, but I think you can't, looking at it now, you can't say that they're not treating it as its own generation, because there are a lot of PlayStation 5 exclusive things. We've got 2 whole games that can only be played on PlayStation 5, and you've got all of the DualSense features and all of the sort of specific things that are only available on PS5 for Horizon. So I don't think that anything points to them not counting PlayStation 5 as its own generation. I think it just shows that they are continuing to support PlayStation 4 years into the PS5's life, which they had already said that they're going to do as well. So it kind of depends on which sort of comment you're going to take and how you're going to look into it. But I just think that no matter what they've said, it's really, really great that PlayStation 4 is continuing to be supported, and they can't have gone back on what they said, because these kind of decisions to make sure it's cross-gen will have been there from the start. They can't just suddenly go, oh, we're going to decide to bring this out on PS4 now as well. It will have had to have been there from the very start. So it's not like they've sort of gone back on something they've said. So yeah, no, I don't agree that there's been anything wrong with what they've said. I just think that if anything, it's good that they're sticking with what they said regarding supporting PlayStation 4 for the years to come, especially with how people can't get their hands on PS5s as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because from what I read online, a lot of the hate, I guess you'd see, is from back, a year ago now. Xbox was taking this route where they were fully being transparent about having these games work on the last-gen hardware and next-gen hardware. And then Sony seemed to be taking a different direction where they were going to have these games locked into PS5 in some capacity. And then it seems like the frustration is they're now going a different route. And with the GT7, that was shown off as, PlayStation 5 had that little moniker on the bottom, and now it has a PS4 version. It seems like the frustration is Sony kind of changing that, or at least the Xbox getting the heat initially for making that decision to be cross-gen from the get-go, and now Sony, going back to that, if that's how you view it. But you're right, where they did mention they were going to support PS4 for a while. I mean, it's a huge install base, but it seems like there's frustration with how the heat was taken on early on, where it was Xbox taking that heat and not PlayStation, and now they're doing the same thing that Xbox was talking about doing from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing as well is Xbox don't have any, as far as I know, I mean, I could be wrong, but they don't have any Xbox Series X exclusive games. Like they're not thinking of their like next gen console as, they're not thinking like generations matter, to take that quote. But we've also got Ratchet and Clank, which is only on PS5 and
True.
is only next gen. So I don't know. I mean, I just don't think there's much. I just don't think that anything's changed. I think Sony is still really, and we don't know what else is coming out this year. There could be, 3 or 4 other PS5 only games. I just think that because these are big games like Horizon and God of War, they're just in the spotlight more, and people are just saying, "Oh, I thought they said this," and it's like, but it just doesn't. I don't know. To me, it just doesn't seem like there's been any misleading or anything like that. I think the fact that we've had these big games that are only available on PS5s, there's a lot of people who can't even play them, I think shows that they are treating the PS5 as a new generation, and they're really honing in on that. So yeah, I don't know really sort of, and the heat that Xbox got, is that from like fans or from
apparently, yeah.
So I mean that's one thing that I've sort of tried to just ignore now. I mean, there's a lot of these narratives of like saying like, oh well, Xbox did this or Xbox said this, when really it was just idiots online who like Xbox saying it. I mean, it's not representative of the actual brands or anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, I can definitely see why people. I can definitely see why people are concerned in terms of like the PlayStation 4 holding things back, and I can definitely see why people may have thought that this comment meant that they're just abandoning the PS4 or just making games for the PS5. But I don't know. I don't think that generations matter necessarily means that. I don't think that meant that they're just not going to make any games for the PS4 anymore. It just means that there's going to be stuff exclusively for the PS5, which there is, and we'll continue to see as well. And in comparison to Xbox, they're definitely treating the next gen consoles as an exclusive place to only be able to do certain things. So
gotcha. How do you feel about, we can pick apart this as well a little bit. I guess I had a little bit of I have a bunch of different views happening at once when I initially heard like God of War. And that was actually with God of War, it was not confirmed, but we have heard online that it was going to be on PS4. It's like, okay, fine. And now GT7 finally confirmed for PS4 as well. I guess I'm a bit bummed initially when I hear that, because I think in the back of my mind, could these games, are they being held back at all? And I just don't know. As a consumer, as a fan, I'm not in these meetings with these devs, hearing them, pitch for the next game and seeing what they want to do. Are they going to these meetings saying, okay, we have this next gen hardware, but here's what we want to do with the SSD, here's what we can do with this world, we can make it deeper, more detailed, and does Sony go, yeah, that's cool, but it's got to also work on PS4, and they go, shit, is that what's happening? If it does, then that bumps me out. But at the end of the day, if the devs are cool with it, and they can still utilize the hardware and and create their vision that they initially intended to, then I'm cool with that at the end of the day. But that's where I just don't know what's happening behind the scenes. I know Cory Barlog had a tweet last weekend. It was like kind of a funny poll that he posted on Twitter, asking, does the game does the game you play matter? Does the hardware matter? Or does, I think it was like raccoons matter or something like that. He was trying to, it was a tongue-in-cheek way of saying like, do you care about the end result, or do you care about where you play it? And it seems like he was telling the fact that they just are making the game, and they're not worried about like the hardware that they're limited to in some form. So that's my only thing, is like, are we getting a limited version of these games? It seems like we're not. We talked to death about Miles, and with Horizon looking awesome, these cross-gen games look really great. But at the end of the day, are we getting, I'd love to hear these meetings with these devs. Are they pitching stuff that is then getting denied because they can't put it on PS5 exclusively? I don't know. But at the end of the day, if the devs are cool with it, I'm cool with it, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a conversation to be had there about whether things are held back. But I think for games like these, like big sequels, I don't think the main thing is to try and push the hardware. I think it's to try and create, a sequel that's going to improve on the first game and to do all these certain things. I mean, you've got like Ratchet and Clank's different, where obviously they were like, we want to do this with the SSD and everything like that. Returnal with the instant loading, that's another game that required the hardware, and Demon Souls, I suppose, could probably work on PS4, but again with the faster loading times and everything. So I'm just not sure that that's in the games like these anyway, like Horizon and God of War and Gran Turismo. I'm just not sure that they need the limitless technical sort of boundaries to make these games. So just because obviously they want them to come out in a timely manner as well. So they have a lot of the sort of limitations, I don't think, are actually around the technology necessarily for games like these. I think it's the limitations come from getting them out at some point, fairly soon, so that people can play these sequels to these games, especially the story-heavy games like Horizon and God of War. But I think it matters depending on what game it is. I think the God of War and Horizon are such huge games as well. It's obviously very important for them to reach as many people as they can, not just business-wise and financially, but also because there's going to be so many people who still won't have a PS5 by the time these games come out, I'm sure. So yeah, I just think with these games in particular, I don't think there's any reason for them to need to leave the PS4 behind, like we were saying as well, especially considering how good already Horizon looks, how good Spider-Man looks. I don't think, unless that they had like some mechanic that the SSD would require or anything like that. I just don't think that's in the forefront of their mind, is making a game that is unachievable on PS4.
Yeah, it's interesting where I initially started, with that viewpoint where it's like I felt that bummed, feeling when I hear this, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world. Where if you look at the PC world, they really pride themselves, at least PC fans, on like, this is the best place to play games, and this is where you're getting everything unlocked and all these different features. I get that, but even the PC world has to work with what's the most common GPU out there, and then they kind of create that as a baseline, or making sure their software, that game, works on that most common GPU. So I looked it up on Steam. Their data indicates that the GTX 1660, I want to say, if I'm looking that up right now, 1060, there we go. The GTX 1060, which came out in 2016, that's the most common GPU out there on Steam. So a lot of these devs have to take that into consideration to making sure their game at least works on that and runs well. And then you have the bells and whistles turned on for all the different power users who have like the 30 series, 20 series, etc. So that already happens there in the PC world. That's pride themselves on having these fully enabled experiences. On PS4 and going to PS5, that's the same thing. It's a PS4 is the base model. It makes sure it runs there. Then everything's turned on PS5. So it's really the same thing. So even though as I feel like, I'm bummed, are these games being held back? Potentially they're not, because on the PC world, it's the same stuff that's been happening for decades. And so it's like, at the end of the day, what are we complaining about? And really should be, what does the game look like? How does it perform? That kind of thing. So we all just need to chill out a little bit and kind of take everything into context.
And the gap in sort of visual quality on PC is so much bigger than between what we see on PS4 and PS5. I mean, if you look at a game that's running on its lowest possible settings at 1080p on a PC, take that same game and run it at 4K highest possible settings I mean, the difference visually is astonishing.
Right.
And I mean, but also the difference in machine you need to be able to run those differences is also massive. So that's why I don't think visually, animation wise, resolution wise, texture wise, I don't think it really matters because you can just scale things down, relatively easily to run on weaker hardware. Obviously, that has a limit, which is why games on PC have minimum spec requirements. But I just don't think we're really at that stage where a PS4 is going to hold back the visual fidelity of a game. Because, like you said, it just seems like for PS5 you can just turn everything up and raise everything up, and it just looks like a completely different game. I think where the hot technical holdbacks are is for a game that requires certain things the PS4 doesn't have, like the SSD or like the DualSense stuff. So if a game revolves around those things, like Returnal does, like Ratchet and Clank will, like Demon Souls does, then that's why they're not on. That's why they're only on PlayStation 5, and I imagine that's why they mean generations matter, because they have these things that are not available on PS4 that are on PS5 and being utilized. Whereas if you look at Xbox, there aren't any of these games that use these specific things that are only on the Series X. So I think that's probably where the generations matter thing comes into it as well. But yeah, I mean, PCs are a good way to look at it. I just don't think that there is, especially when you've got with PCs, you've got like hundreds of different combinations of things.
Yep.
PlayStation, you've got a PS4 and a PS4. You've got two different. Well, you've got the Pro as well, I suppose, but it's
You
still
got
a
three
lot.
variants.
Yeah, it's a lot less things to have to optimize for. So I just don't personally see it as something that could hold them back, especially not this early on in PlayStation 5 sort of life cycle, and especially when we've only just got like Unreal Engine 5, so things are going to still be discovered now with that. So yeah, I think we're fine.
Yeah, here's another viewpoint. Are we paying for the PS5 just to get PS4 games with more bells and whistles? Like, is that a thought that ever crosses your mind?
Yeah, I think so, but I think that's the same with anything. I think that was the same when we upgraded from PS3 to PS4. It was just games looked better. With the PS5, we now have games that look better again, but we have things like faster loading, haptic feedback, and also, I mean, it's the same reason why people spend £600 on a new graphics card on their PC, and that's like, and even if they spend £300 on your graphics card, they might spend another £300 on a new processor or something like that. It's only to get better visuals, better frame rates. That's what it always is. So, I mean, yeah, of course, that's what we're. To me, that's the only reason we're buying a PS5 is to play these games at higher fidelity. And I think as time goes on, these jumps are going to be much smaller. I mean, if you look at the jump from PS2 to PS3, it was absolutely huge. The jump from PS3 to PS4 was huge as well, but definitely not as big. And now the jump from PS4 to PS5 is big, but it can only be recognized in certain ways, like loading times and ray tracing and haptic feedback. So it is getting to the point where it does seem less of a jump, maybe. But you've also got to look at the price. I mean, you can get a PlayStation 5 for £370, which, is about the price of like an entry point graphics card. I mean, that's about the price of like what, a 2060, 3060, the lowest of the new cards. So I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely what we're doing. We're buying a new console to play games just at slightly higher fidelity.
Now, here's another point or viewpoint that I sometimes dabble in is wondering, as much as we can wonder, say Corona never happened. And now it's really hard to just like imagine a world where that didn't exist. But if that didn't happen and PS5 was able to launch with the way they intended, back in like 2019 or something, when Sony's having their projections of what they're going to sell and ramping up production, all that. If Corona never happened, do you think we'd still see that same support on PS4 if they were able to sell more PS5s? Do you think their decision to support PS4 because there's 100 and some odd million PS4s out there Is that pro consumer, or they're just going to PS4 because they're going to make those copies back? They're going to sell those copies. Do you think they would support PS4 in the way they would if Corona wasn't an issue?
Yeah, I think so. I think again, I think because they had initially come out and said that they were going to support the PS4 for many years, and it was going to be their main source of income still. Um, for the first 2 or 3 years of the PS5's out, and that was before COVID even happened. So I don't think that projections ever changed. Again, I think it's just because the discrepancy between consoles is no longer just visual, because the visual jump is not as big. I think it's because of these additional technological advancements like ray tracing and like SSDs and things like that. So I think it's just easier to support the older platforms than it ever has been. I mean, the jump from PS3 to PS4 was obviously massive, and so it wouldn't have been. I mean, we went from like what the PS3 had like 512 meg of RAM or something like that,
and the cell chip would have made it hard to transition stuff.
Yeah, whereas I mean, the PS4 to PS5, as much as it is a big hardware jump, it's really not as big a jump as all the other times. Again, the biggest jump has been the inclusion of an SSD and how that's been engineered into it, and the fact that these new APUs could support ray tracing. So I don't think COVID's influenced them to bring these out on PS4. I mean, I could be completely wrong, and it definitely sounds like something that could be the case. But judging from what was said about the PS4 before, and also just how much smaller the jump, the sort of jump in visual quality is, I just think it makes sense, because there really isn't there really is a lot of people that wouldn't be able to get a PS5 anyway, just for financial reasons or whatever.
Sure.
So I think it's something that was clearly easy enough to do, so that they're doing it. But again, that's just pure speculation, and I don't know what the actual reason is. But that's how I sort of imagine it.
Yeah, no, and I'm pretty much with you there. Like a lot of these are just devil's advocate kind of points of view and stuff that I see online. But I think at the end of the day, if the devs are cool with it, I'm cool with it, and I think they're gonna play and look awesome. Like I trust Sony Santa Monica to produce an awesome God of War on PS4 and PS5. It's at the end of the day, it's gonna be fine. There's also that little bug in the back of my brain looking at PS5 and going, man, I would love to see a dedicated, God of War for PS5. What would that look like? Or a dedicated Horizon? But we will get there eventually. Like we're in the first year of PS5. And I guess that's what's also nuts is we're getting these huge juggernaut games that were on PS4 within the first year and a half, 2 years of PS5. Like it seems like that would be way later in the cycle, but we're getting it pretty soon. So, we're getting these games sooner than traditionally later than we would have. So it's awesome. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm with you on that. I just want to play these games. I'm sure they're going to be dope, but also I entertain those different thoughts out there and kind of want to pick them apart. But yeah, I think we're going to be fine, guys. I think we're going to be all right. We got to just focus on surviving just life in general. And I think these games are going to be dope regardless.